So, good morning everyone. We are Group 4. So, our topic is about Philippine forest and wildlife resources. The Philippines is one of the world's mega diverse countries, rich in forest ecosystem and wildlife species. Its forests provide habitat for thousands of endemic plants and animals, regulate climate, protect watersheds, and support livelihoods. So, what are the types of forests in the Philippines?
So there are many types of forests. So forest type of the Philippines. Philippine forests are classified based on altitude, climate, and vegetation. So first is lowland evergreen or dipty rock carp forest. So, found below 100 meters and dominated by dipty rock carp trees and highest biodiversity.
Molly forest occurs in the dry areas dominated by molliverous. For example, forests in Luzon and Mindanao. Pine forest found in the highlands dominated by benguet pine. Color climate, for example, Cordillera region. Mountain forest. Mountain forest is located at high elevation. Most cover trees. The environment is typically cooler and wetter than surrounding areas. Mangrove forests. Mangrove forests are coastal contain salt and tolerant plants and fatigue shorelines from the erosion.
Hi everyone, I report about Philippine wildlife resources. Wildlife resources include wild animals and plants living in natural habitats, both terrestrial and aquatic. Example of Philippines wildlife, we got mammals, Philippine eagle, tarsier, birds, hornbill, kingfisher, reptiles, monitor lizard, amphibians, frogs, marine life, coral reefs, sea turtle. We have three endemic species. Species found only in the Philippines. First is Philippine eagle, the second is tamarau, and the last is Philippine crocodile. Function of wildlife ecological function. First is maintain ecological balance. Wildlife maintains the food chain through complex predator-prey relations, which prevents overpopulation of certain species and ensure environmental health. Second is pollination and seed dispersal. Animals like bees, birds, and birds are critical for plant production and the growth of forests by transporting pollen and seeds across the yarrows landscapes controls pests. Economic function. The presence of wildlife drives global industries and essential physical resources. Ecotourism. Wildlife-based tourism generates significant revenue and provides employment, particularly in regions with diverse natural paths of safaris. Source of food and medicines. Many human population of rely on wildlife as a direct source of animal protein. Wildlife contributes to the intellectual and spiritual fabric of human scientists. Cultural heritage. Wildlife holds immense spiritual and aesthetic values, inspiring art and literature and traditional beliefs of many cultures. Wildlife. Scientific research and education. Studying wildlife and give help scientists and understand evolutions, genetics, and ecology. Natural of habitat serves and living laboratories and environment education and the development of sustainable management practices. Classification based on habitats. The classifications divides animals based on their primary living environment. Terrestrial wildlife. Animals that live primarily on land, including forests, deserts, grasslands, and mountains. Example of that is lions, tigers, elephants, giraffes, camels, and wolves. Aquatic wildlife. Animals that live in the water, bodies such as oceans, seas, rivers, and lakes. They are the further categories in the marine, saltwater, and the freshwater. Example of that we got salmon or tuna, dolphins, white sea turtles, octopus, and crabs. Classification based on conservation status. The systems primarily managed by the IUCN regulates levels species based on the risk of extinctions. Threatened, a general term of species facing a high risk of extinction in the wild. This category includes vulnerable, endangered, and critically endangered. Vulnerable or BO species facing a high risk of extinction the wild in the medium-term future that requires active and conservation efforts. Example of cheetahs, koalas, polar bears, lion, and giant antique bears. Endangered or EN species facing a high risk and extinction in the wild the near future. They often characterized by 20% of higher chance to extinction within 20 years or living generation. Example is Asian elephants, bonobos, tigers, and red pandas. Less concerned with LC species that have an evaluate but do not qualify for a higher risk category. These are generally referred as abundant. Example of that is brown bears, red foxes, moose, and humans.
Important laws and provisions on forest and wildlife conservation. First is Presidential Decree Number 705 Revised Forestry Code. For example, regulates forest use and protection and prevents illegal logging. Second is Republic Act Number 9147 Wildlife Resource Conservation and Protection Act. Example, protects wildlife and habitats, regulates hunting and trade penalties for illegal activities. And third one is Republic Act Number 7586 National Integrated Protected Areas System NIPAS Act. For example, establishes protected areas, conserves biodiversity, and the fourth one is Republic Act Number 11038 expanded NIPAS Act. For example, strengthens protection of national parks and increases penalties. And the last one is Republic Act Number 168 protects plant varieties and wildlife trade.
So hi everyone, long time no see. Our report talks about Philippine forests and wildlife resources and why they are very important to our country. These resources are considered valuable national assets because they support both human life and nature. Part of my report is important of forest and wildlife conservation. First, forest and wildlife help maintain biodiversity, meaning they protect different kinds of animals and plants from extinction. When forests are healthy, animals have food and also our ecosystem stay balanced. Second, forests protect watershed and regulate climate. Trees help prevent floods and landslide. It provide clean water and reduce the effect of climate change by absorbing carbon dioxide. Third, forest and wildlife conservation support sustainable livelihoods because some of us Filipino people is nagdepende sa forest for food and medicine and having income, especially indigenous and rural communities. Lastly, serving forests ensures that future generation will still having natural resources to use and enjoy.
So, Philippine forests and wildlife resources are invaluable national assets. Understanding their types, functions, classifications, and legal protection is essential for environmental sustainability and national development. And that's all our topic about Philippine Forest and Wildlife Resource.